We humans are a little bit weird. We love the occasional good surprise, finding out we're getting a pay rise or discovering that we've been upgraded to that fancy hotel room, maybe even an unexpected gift. Some people even enjoy surprise birthday parties. Others, not so much. And some folks, like me, have medical conditions where unexpected surprises aren't just unpleasant, they can actually be dangerous. I'm not kidding. I have long QT syndrome, a heart rhythm condition. We don't know exactly which type I have because everyone in my family who has it appears to carry a previously unknown genetic variant linked to cardiac pacing, and we all have the condition. But in the more common type 2 long QT syndrome, which I definitely do not have, being startled, like someone jumping out from behind you and going, "Surprise!" can trigger a dangerous arrhythmia that can lead to cardiac arrest and, if not treated immediately, death. Me, I usually just pass out. Yeah, really, look all of that up. So, while we might enjoy a good surprise, we also really dislike bad ones. And we especially hate it when something we've been told to expect, something we've trusted, turns out not to behave the way we thought it would. When a number doesn't mean what we assumed it meant. And when that violated expectation is coming straight from the dashboard of your electric car, when the car says you can do 240 miles and you can only make it 200, that tends to elicit some pretty strong emotional responses. So today, we're going to talk about guessometers, those tiny little triple-digit displays in modern EVs that attempt to predict how far your car can travel on a charge. And we're also going to explain why they're so often wrong. If you've been driving an EV for a while, you already know the number on the dashboard only has a passing familiarity with real-world experience. If you're new to EVs, it might be your number one frustration about making the switch. Or perhaps a close second, right after figuring out reliable charging if you don't have off-street parking. And yeah, we've made this video before, quite a long time ago, when I was a little younger and frankly, a little bigger. But YouTube has a habit of burying videos in its digital vaults with the same twisted joy your DM displays when you fail an easy skill check against a big bad who's 5 levels higher than you. So, given the number of Reddit threads and social media posts I've seen lately asking, why doesn't my EV get the range it promised, it felt like the perfect time to revisit this topic. This time, however, instead of just saying lots of things affect EV range and calling it good, I want to go deeper. Because yes, speed matters, temperature matters, terrain matters, driver behaviour matters, you towing or not matters, but that's really only part of the story. The real reason guessometers feel so terrible isn't just variability, it's that they're trying to predict the future, and predicting the future, especially in a multi-ton vehicle moving through a constantly changing environment, is a brutally difficult problem. This isn't bad engineering, it's physics, it's probability, and it's human psychology. So today we're going to remind ourselves what actually affects EV range, explain why automakers genuinely struggle to predict it, talk about why it feels worse in an EV than it does a gas car, and give you some practical tips to stay both sane and safe on longer distance trips. And no, the keyboard warriors who insist all you need to do is to drive a car personally handcrafted by Elon Musk in his grotto are both wrong, and may have a mild hero worship issue.
Now you listen here! He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy!
I'll talk about what actually affects range in a moment, but first, did you know that we're here because of our amazing community of supporters on Patreon, YouTube, Discord and Ko-fi? Unlike a lot of channels, we don't take big advertorial sponsorship deals, and we only exist because you support us. There's a link in the down below on how to join, plus links on our channel on the Fediverse, because in addition to being independent, we also think everyone should have free access to information without being tracked. Now, to what actually affects range. Like all cars, like all-wheeled vehicles, how far you travel per unit of energy comes down to some basic fundamentals. Vehicle shape and aerodynamic profile matters. Weight matters, including how much you've loaded into the vehicle. Maintenance matters. Even EVs with single-speed reduction gearboxes experience higher losses when things aren't in good condition. Tyre pressure matters. And while we're here, tread depth also affects efficiency. Poor wheel alignment increases rolling resistance, and incorrect camber quietly eats into your range. If you haven't had your alignment checked in a while, this might be your sign. And that's before we even get to temperature, wind elevation change, battery conditioning, HVAC use, or how enthusiastically you treat the go pedal. I'm sure at this point we're not breaking any new ground. After all, as I've already acknowledged, we've made videos on this topic before. We've even explained how aware driving, effectively preemptively preparing for traffic signals, terrain changes and congestion, can improve EV efficiency no end. So let's instead focus on what makes EV guessometer engineering so bloody difficult, because that, really, is the reason EVs often make you feel like you're being gaslit about how far you can drive before you need to stop and charge. Pun intended. First, it's important to understand that EV batteries, even the very good ones, are basically their own little ecosystems of electrochemistry. Most modern EV packs are made up of hundreds of individual cells. Each cell is manufactured to be very similar, but in reality there are tiny differences in capacity, internal resistance and thermal behaviour. And where a cell sits in the pack can also affect how hot or cold it tends to run. On paper, every single cell should be identical. The same amount of active material, the same energy capacity, the same voltage range. But in practice, that's never quite the case. Every pack is different, and every cell within every pack is slightly different. Over time, normal cycling and temperature variations cause some cells to diverge slightly from their neighbours. Multiply that by several hundred cells, and you can see why the energy landscape of a battery is constantly shifting. To manage this, automakers and battery suppliers have developed sophisticated battery management systems, or BMSes, and gone are the days when a BMS simply made sure each cell stayed within safe voltage limits and temperature limits. Today, a BMS actively monitors each cell, its voltage under load and at rest, temperature, current, and estimated capacity, and uses that data to track overall battery health. When possible, it even performs balancing operations to keep weaker and stronger cells in alignment with the rest. Why does this matter? I'm not going to go too deep here, but if one cell in a pack is weaker than its neighbours, it can't deliver as much current without voltage sag, and repeated stress can accelerate its aging. This is especially true in packs with parallel strings of series-connected cells. The BMS prevents problems by balancing cells, sometimes discharging higher cells or supporting weaker ones, usually when the car is parked or charging slowly. Think about it as a subtle ongoing team effort to keep hundreds of teammates roughly in sync. Now you might be wondering why I've dragged BMS into this. After all, this is supposed to be about guessometers being, well, a bit naff. But the truth is, modern BMSes are basically the brains behind those numbers, or at least they feed the data that lets the car try to predict range. And the amount of data they handle is vast. Voltages tracked to thousandths of a volt, temperatures logged in multiple decimals, Coulomb counting to figure out how energy flows in and out of hundreds of different cells. Your guessometer, or the computer that feeds it, has to turn all of that chaos into a single number you can actually understand. And that number isn't constant. Power drain is always changing. The car has to smooth, average, and guess its way through a constantly moving puzzle, or else the display would bounce around like Tesla stock every time Elon Musk tweets about the next big thing. So, how do guessometers actually work? They use battery data and how efficiently you've historically been driving. They factor in outside temperature and battery temperature, and sometimes even a combination of how you've driven today, how you usually drive, and how you've driven over the last few weeks or months. And all of these are useful data points. More data generally helps plot a better, smoother line on a graph to make the best case guess for range. Yet most range estimates don't know what's going to happen next. They only know what's already happened. And unfortunately, cars don't have flux capacitors to mess with space-time. You can't undo the past, and even if you hit 88 miles per hour, you're not getting that energy back. Unless, of course, you're about to regen down a very long, very steep hill. And the so-called flux capacitor dragster, the heavily modified 1970s Enfield 8000, once owned in stock form by my co-host Kate Walton-Elliott before Johnny Smith turned it into a drag strip demon, didn't actually have a time travel device. It's a real electric car project that became one of Europe's quickest street-legal EVs, but sadly, no flux capacitor was involved. Since guessometer ranges are calculated using averages from a whole bunch of different data points, many of them rooted in lab-derived constants and baseline figures that also underpin official range ratings, and very rarely resemble real-world driving, your average EV is essentially making an educated guess about how far you'll go if you keep driving exactly as you have up to this moment. However, as every slightly nervous financial disclaimer reminds us, past performance is not indicative of future results. And when you consider that every EV has a unique driver with unique habits, good and bad, unique routes, unique weather conditions, and a battery pack made up of microscopically different cells, average is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting. But it's not all doom and gloom. There have been, and still are, ways to improve accuracy, or at least give drivers a clearer picture of what's going on. Some automakers, Chevrolet did it with the original Bolt EV, and Tesla has offered similar tools for years, let you view your predicted range in different ways. You can look at an ideal conditions estimate based on official figures, or a projection based on your recent driving efficiency. Some vehicles even let you see how range changes depending on how aggressively you might choose to drive. That's really useful because it shows the gap between what the car could achieve in perfect conditions and what you're actually on track to achieve based on how you're driving right now. Today's most sophisticated EVs go even further. They offer terrain-aware route planning, systems that look at where you are, where you've been, and where you're heading. For example, if your route includes a 4,000-foot climb up a mountain pass and the outside temperature is cold enough to give brass monkeys GCS, the car will factor that in and trim your projected range before you even start the ascent. But if you're already at the top of that mountain pass and heading down the other side, a good route planner will suddenly tell you your range has improved dramatically because gravity is now your biatch. The catch? Doing that properly takes serious number crunching. Live traffic data, weather data, elevation models, efficiency modelling, and usually a constant data connection pulling it all in real time. And even with all of that, even with thousands of data points, live updates, and some very smart engineering types, the car is still trying to predict something that hasn't happened yet. It doesn't know if you're about to accelerate harder than usual. It doesn't know if the wind is about to pick up. It doesn't know if traffic is suddenly about to grind to a halt, or perhaps clear. It only knows what it knows right now, and what it's recently experienced. So when the number on your dashboard changes, it's not lying to you, it's not gaslighting you, it's recalculating constantly based on new information. And sometimes that recalculation feels like betrayal, because we don't see a probability curve, we see a promise. And we humans don't like uncertainty, we like predictability. Okay, ADHD brains like novelty and they like excitement, but this isn't novelty or excitement, it's anxiety, which ADHD brains also do very well, but take it from me, it's much less fun. If your guessometer says 240 miles remaining, you trust it, and then you forget that you're the reason that the number drops when you sprint away from the light, and you're also the reason it climbs back up when you ease off the right pedal. What the car is giving you isn't a guarantee, It's a forecast, and forecasts, whether about the weather, the stock market, or how far your EV will go, are only ever as good as the assumptions behind them.
Earlier on today, apparently a woman rang the BBC and said she heard that there was a hurricane on the way. Well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't.
Aha! I hear you say. What about gas cars and their fuel gauges? They are much more reliable. And I can understand why that might feel like the case, but I'd be lying if I pretended EVs and gas cars are the same, because they're not. As I am sure you are aware, ICE vehicles are terribly inefficient. Often only about 25 to 40% of the fuel's energy actually makes it to the wheels, with the rest lost as heat and friction. Because so much energy is already wasted, small changes in driving style or conditions barely move the fuel gauge, which, by the way, is still often just a gauge, or maybe if you're really lucky, somewhere on the dash in digital form. ICE vehicles also carry more energy and tend to have a larger range per fill than EVs, which means any effects of diminishing range are often forgotten between trips. In contrast, many EV drivers start every day with a full or nearly full battery pack, so those small changes become immediately noticeable. EVs, unlike ICE vehicles, are highly efficient. They carry less total energy on board and are about 85 to 90% efficient with their energy. 85 to 90% of the energy stored within their battery packs usually makes it to the wheels. That makes EVs the efficiency champion by a long way, but that efficiency also means any tiny changes in how you drive or the environment you're in will dramatically impact your range in a way that your guessometer is not always capable of tracking or predicting. There is, however, hope on the horizon. Hope in the form of more data. Automakers base their guessometer calculations on lab testing and early engineering real-world driving tests. The dawn of connected cars and telematics opens the door to more data collection about how cars are performing in the real world, and more data makes it easier to define more accurately, but still fuzzy mathy, models to help cars better understand their real-world range and communicate it to the driver. And the more vehicles there are on the road and the more miles and kilometres those vehicles travel, the easier it becomes for clever programming sorts to come up with smarter, more aware algorithms. And I also can't believe I'm about to say it, but AI can actually help as well. Yeah, I know we here at the channel aren't exactly big fans of AI. I mean, AI has become something of a scourge on the planet right now, what with its voracious appetite for RAM chips that haven't even been produced yet, its insatiable desire for more power and data, and its climate-rising emissions output. But there are some applications for which LLMs are useful, and for once, AI could help EVs by helping automakers improve range algorithm and predictions. The age of AI, however terrible it might be for the IQ of the world, for increasing economic inequality, and so much more, has allowed for better algorithmic programming of BMS and range prediction software. It's also given rise to the world of digital twins, where battery packs in the real world are paired with virtual battery pack twins that allow automakers to more closely predict and model how a battery will perform as it ages. Finally, chemistry changes can also help. As battery chemistry becomes more robust, longer-lived, and less electrochemically unstable, they should behave in more predictable, easily understood ways that will make range prediction algorithms better and more accurate. That, unfortunately, though, is in the future. So how about in the now? Well, if you're doing a long-distance road trip in an EV and you're worried about real versus claimed range, I'd love to tell you there's a simple hack. But right now, my best advice is to get more experience behind the wheel, or perhaps on the saddle if it's an electric bike. The more roads and routes you become familiar with, the easier it'll be to make long-distance trips without getting range anxiety. For example, when we did our recent trip back from Southern California to Portland, Oregon, I was able to skip an entire charging stop in LA because I knew I could climb the Grapevine north on I-5 and make it all the way to Buttonwillow, even if my F-150 Lightning was having panic attacks because it thought I was going to continue climbing a massive hill I'd already climbed. Knowing your route and when you'll hit big hills and route-impacting challenges is really important for confidence and your mental health. Second, if you're unsure of the route and unsure of your vehicle, plan a buffer. Don't plan on arriving with no miles remaining. Plan on arriving with 30 to 40 miles. Yeah, I know there are amazing people out there like Kyle from Out of Spec who rock up with a few measly electrons to charge. But until you're really used to your vehicle or driving EVs as a whole, it's not worth it. Third, chill. You'd be surprised how regular breaks, proper hydration and rest stops impact your ability to squeeze efficiency out of your right foot. Tired, stressed and undernourished bodies make poor choices. So that's it. Was I too soft on Automakers? Did I miss anything out? And do you now understand why range prediction algorithms are so often out of whack? Let me know in the down below. Thanks for watching it to the end, and if you've made it this far, tell me in the down below what your best and worst experiences with guessometers have been to date, and let me know which vehicle or route planning systems you prefer for accurate range predictions. Personally, I'm a fan of a better route planner. We're 100% independent here at the channel, and if you'd like to help us stay that way, there's a link in the down below to support us on Patreon from $1.50 US a month, so you can join the long list of amazing channel supporters right here. You can also send us money on Ko-fi, buy some swag from our swag store, like this phenomenal t-shirt, and please hit subscribe. YouTube will no longer reliably tell you we've pushed a new video though, so make sure you follow us on social media or join our Discord chat room so you know when the next video drops. Thanks for watching, thanks for helping be the positive change in the world, and until next time, keep evolving!